Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, July the 12th, 2020. It is currently 9:20 a.m. Central Time, and I'm sitting here in the sanctuary of Victory Baptist Church in Ovalo, Texas. And yes, at 10 a.m., I'm supposed to be live on the air for the Sunday School Hour. But before we get to the Sunday School Hour, I wanted to take a few minutes to look at a news story that I think what I'm discovering is I think it's more significant than most people do. I don't think most people seem that interested. They hear a report, some ancient Christian church is being turned into a mosque. Okay, whatever, who cares? That seems to be the feeling that I am getting when I talk to people about it. Or if I even mention the name of this ancient Christian church to people, they're like, never heard of it. And you're like, you never heard of it? Like, what? So maybe I'm wasting my time even talking about this. But the one thing I've learned when it comes to podcasting is I can't spend my time trying to figure out what everyone else wants me to talk about. And all I can really do is turn on the microphone and talk about what I think is important and what I think you need to know about, right? So you may not care, but if you don't care, then you're not going to listen. So then I'm just going to be recording and nobody's going to hear it. So then I'm simply talking to myself. Okay, whatever. Now I'm going to start analyzing that. I think this is an important story. I really do. I do think it's an important story. I think this ancient Christian church that's being turned into a mosque, I think it's a pretty significant building. Some will say its design changed architecture forever. I mean, there's a lot of, important things to this ancient church. But let's do a little background. Let's learn a little bit about it, because if you listen to the news right now, you're going to hear some people in the news pronounce the name of this ancient church one way. And then if you listen to another report, you'll hear them pronounce the name a different way. And you're like, wait, why? And it comes down, are you going to pronounce it the way it would be if we were using the Greek name for it, or if we're using it from the Turkish way of describing it? There's a reason there's a different ways of saying it, and it really depends on which language you're going to borrow from. So we're going to learn about that. We'll get a little background of this church, and then we'll get the news report, and then I'm just going to throw in a very quick analysis because I don't have a lot of time, because the Sunday School Hour starts at 10 a.m. So Just please hear this out. I'll try not to waste too much of your time. I think this is important. You can let me know your thoughts about this story by emailing me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, or you can leave comments on YouTube or leave comments on SoundCloud or wherever. You can let me know what you think. All right, here we go. Let's listen to this. I think this will give you a little bit of background.
The Church of the Holy Wisdom. It's known as the Hagia Sophia in Greek, Sancta Sophia in Latin, and Hagia Sophia in Turkish.
Okay, Hagia Sophia in Greek, Hagia Sophia in Turkish. The Hagia Sophia is the one that a lot of the media is. That's how a lot of the media are using that way of pronouncing it. Especially, I think that seems to be the way here in the United States of America, foreign news media is that's the way they are saying it. I know it as Hagia Sophia. That's the way I've always heard it pronounced. So just maybe just because we're in America, that's the way we say it. I don't know. But just so that you know, if you hear news reports of Hagia Sophia or Hagia Sophia, it's speaking of the same ancient Christian church that's being turned now into a mosque. Let's get some more information.
It's widely acknowledged as an architectural revolution. This massive structure was the largest cathedral the world had known for nearly 1,000 years and is said to have changed the history of architecture. The city from which the Hagia Sophia would eventually rise had been known as Byzantium. Legend has it that Constantine I renamed the city New Rome, but its citizens insisted on the name Constantinople in his honor. Constantine the Great was the first emperor to declare himself a Christian and ruled the empire from his namesake city. The Hagia Sophia was built around 530 AD by the great Byzantine Emperor Justinian I, the last Latin-speaking monarch of the Roman Empire. Constantinople had become the most important city in the Roman Empire at this time, and the basilica dominated the heart of the city. The accomplished Roman general Belisarius was vital to the funding of the majestic church. His campaigns over the Ostrogoths and Vandals amassed much wealth for the empire. This was the seat of the Orthodox Patriarch of Constantinople. For centuries, every Byzantine emperor was crowned here. It took over 10,000 men and just under 6 years to build the church, an unbelievable accomplishment for its time. When it was finished, Justinian is said to have exclaimed, "Solomon, I have outdone thee." Originally, the surface of the interior was covered in gold mosaic. Treasures included the remains of 2 saints, the true cross, the hammer and nails of the Passion, swaddling clothes of Christ, the table from the Last Supper, and the chains of St. Peter.
Please note that's the claims of having those certain things in the church, having those artifacts, I guess you could say. Is there any, did they have the true cross? Did they have the hammer and nails? Did they have the table from the Last Supper? Are those actual items, or are those just claims? Just make sure you don't I don't know how you would be able to verify any of those claims. And there was a time that churches everywhere were running around claiming that they had this, or they had that, they had this, and they had that. And, everyone was making these claims. So you always have to be skeptical when you hear that.
Remaining today are 8 columns from the Temple of the Sun in Rome and columns of green marble from the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus. At almost 33 meters wide, it had the most prodigious domed ceiling in the world. Combined with its height of 49 meters, it would remain the largest church on the globe for the next 700 years. It was an outstanding example of Byzantine wealth and grandeur. The original mosaics that adorned the interior were replaced when it was converted to a mosque in the 1400s.
Please note, it was converted into a mosque in the 1400s. So if it was converted to a mosque in the 1400s, how is it being converted to a mosque in 2020? What happened? What changed? What does that signify? Is there a lesson we can learn from that? That's important, right? Let's continue.
The Byzantine mosaics are gradually being exposed, but only those on the higher gallery levels. This is so Muslims are not confronted with Christian imagery in the main chamber of the building, which served as a mosque for nearly 500 years. This mosaic, from around the 10th century, features the Virgin Mary with Constantine and Justinian. On the right, Constantine the Great is presenting a model of the city of Constantinople, and to the left, Emperor Justinian is presenting the church of the Hagia Sophia. Here, Christ is flanked by Constantine IX and Empress Zoe, both in ceremonial costumes. He is offering a donation to the church, while she is holding a scroll with a record of her donations. One of the best-known mosaics in the Hagia Sophia, this is called a Deicist mosaic. It depicts a triumphant Christ on Judgment Day, flanked by the Virgin Mary and John the Baptist. This marble door led to the meeting chamber for ecclesiastical councils, meetings of high clergy to decide on religious issues.
Gün dolandı dalı taşı
1453 would mark the end of the Byzantine Empire. After a siege that lasted 8 weeks, the Sultan of the Ottoman Turks, Mehmet II, had accomplished what no other invader could. The great walls of the invincible city of Constantinople were breached, bringing an end to an empire that had endured for more than 1,100 years. The city was renamed Istanbul, and Mehmet the Conqueror declared himself the new Caesar of Rome. The Ottomans converted the Hagia Sophia into a mosque. The bells, altar, and other Christian vestiges were removed, and many of the mosaics were plastered over. Islamic features, including 4 minarets, were added. At ground level, most of the decorations are Islamic. This beautiful marble structure is an example of that. The mihrab, a niche found in all mosques, indicates the direction of Mecca. To the left is the Grand Sultan's Loge, built by 2 Swiss architects, the Fossati brothers. In the mid-1800s, the Fossati brothers were commissioned to renovate the interior. Their work included the addition of these calligraphic rondels that remain today. It remained a mosque until 1935. Of all the buildings Justinian built during his 38 years as Roman emperor, none would be revered more than the Hagia Sophia. It was the church of all future Byzantine emperors. For more than 900 years, Hagia Sophia had been the most important building in the Eastern Christian world and the grandest church in all the world. As the sun set on the Byzantine Empire, so did the Hagia Sophia fade into history.
Now, it has served as a museum for a very long time. That's basically what it has served as a museum. But what I want you to hear, or what I want you to get from all of what we just heard, is that here is one building that demonstrated this transition. Christian, then back to a mosque. It served as a transition. As the world, here's a building that, here's supposedly Christianity, serves as, this major, cathedral, large building representing Christianity. As the world around it changed, right? It went from a Christian thing to a mosque for Islam. It changed. And on one hand, that serves as a very important symbol of how many cases churches change based off what's happening outside of its doors, not based on what's happening inside its doors. We have to be very careful that the church is not transformed by what's happening outside of its doors. The church is to remain consistent. No matter what is happening outside, the church remains consistent. We preach the same gospel. We preach the same Bible. We teach the same things. And we are not to be changed and transformed by what's happening outside the church. But we all know the reality is the church is greatly influenced by what happens outside of its doors. So there's a little bit of symbolism there. Here's this great cathedral. It's changed into a mosque. Then all of these different things happen. It goes back to a mosque. It goes to a museum. And now, well, we have some more news about this, the Hagia Sophia that I'm getting ready to play for you in a second. So on one hand, it serves as a symbol of what can happen, how churches can be influenced inside by what's going on outside. And we need to be very careful with that. But here's another very important thing that when I consider the history of it and what's happening right now, this is very important. The church and Christianity cannot be tied to governmental powers. And here's the reason why. Governmental powers change. And if you merge church and state, it works great when the state is controlled by your religion or your doctrine or your theology. Then your building gets to be what you want it to be. You get your rights, you get your power, and then you can influence your rights and your powers on everyone else. And you can, in many cases, take away other people's rights and powers. That's what happens when you merge religion and the state. When your religion is in charge, great. But the minute your religion loses power, guess what? You begin to lose. You begin to lose your rights. You begin to lose your power. You begin to lose your building, okay? That's why you never want to merge church and state. This is just another reminder to me of what happens when your empire is Christian, and you influence and you have the Christian power as not just a church, but as the state. Then the state walks around taking care of this and taking care of that. And you're like, yes, see, we've reclaimed America for Jesus. We've reclaimed the world for Jesus. Yeah, while the government that supposedly supports Christianity is in power, it works out great. But the minute the Christian government loses its power, and then let's say an Islamic government takes over, now guess what? Christianity is in trouble. That's not the way Christianity is to operate. We don't operate through earthly power. We do not operate through earthly governments. We stand outside of all of that, and Christianity is to continue. And we're not sitting there trying to overcome things through governmental powers. Church and state is great when it's your side in charge. It's not great when your side is no longer in power. Then you lose rights and you lose power and bad things happen. I don't know why Christians never understand this. I don't want the government doing the job of the church. I don't want the public school doing the job of the church. The public school shouldn't be the one leading prayer. The public school shouldn't be teaching the Bible. Let's let the church be the church. And just I'll ask government to leave us alone. Okay, that's what we don't want to reclaim government for Jesus and try to reform America into the image of Christianity. That works great while you're in charge until then Islam takes over, and guess what? They're going to reshape America in the image of Islam. We don't. That's always bad for everyone involved. And the history here of Hagia Sophia kind of demonstrates this. Hey, the Christian empire, look at this church. Oh, wait, Islam takes over. Oh, now it's a mosque. And that's a symbolic way of demonstrating this principle that I have been talking about forever. But here's the new news, the recent news about Hagia Sophia that if you're not aware of, this is what's happened. Now, some say this is a picture of what's happening in Turkey, that Turkey is moving from a secular state, a secular government, to a more religious government. And if that is true, that has major implications for foreign policy. That means we need to really understand that. So many times America has made foreign policy decisions based off theological and religious ignorance. And when you do that, you end up getting yourself in trouble. We need government officials who understand the religious and theological realities of the governments and the countries we get involved with, whether they're Islamic or it doesn't matter what the situation is. We need to understand that. And this latest news may demonstrate, hey, there's a religious change happening in Turkey, and that's something people need to pay attention to. So listen carefully to this.
It was once the greatest cathedral in Christendom, but the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul is now a mosque.
Ya Allah!
Supporters of Turkey's President Erdogan celebrated after a court ruled that the iconic building, revered by both Christians and Muslims, should no longer be considered a museum, but should revert to being a mosque, as it was in the days of the Ottoman Empire, when it acquired its famous minarets. Within minutes of the court ruling, President Erdogan signed a decree ordering the Hagia Sophia to be open for Muslim prayers in 2 weeks' time. But not everyone is celebrating. The Nobel Prize-winning writer Orhan Pamuk says the move marks the end of modern Turkish secularism.
St. Sophia is a sign of modern Turkish Muslim secularism. Now, to convert it back into a mosque, into a regular mosque, is to say to the rest of the world, unfortunately, we don't want to be friendly with the West anymore. Unfortunately, we don't want to be that secular anymore.
I've been speaking to our correspondent.
I want you to hear that. That's a major, if that is true, then this is signifying, hey, we're not going to be secular anymore. We're going to be religious. We're going to look at this from things from an Islamic religious perspective. And that means our dealings with them will have to change. And you need governmental leaders who understand the religious connotations of not a secular country, but a religious country following Islamic religious concepts. You have to understand that. But please note, as the country changes, as the government changes, Hagia Sophia changes. That's the history of it. When it's a Christian empire, it's Christian. When it's an Islamic empire, it's a mosque. That's what I've said so many times. The church is to stay outside of that. We're not connected with the government. It doesn't matter what the government does. The church is to be the church. But this is just, it's symbolic of that problem of merging the two together. So I want to go through the three very important things I want you to get from these reports, and we'll finish this news story. And I'm trying to hurry because I'm supposed to be on the air in 15 minutes for Sunday school. But let's go through these quickly. Number one, this is just symbolic of how the inside of the church can be transformed based on what's happening outside of the church. Number two, this is just a symbolic way of demonstrating when church and state merge in some way, the church is changed by the change in the state. And again, the church should not be changed that way. Number three, this could be a very symbolic reality. That's not a good way to put it. This could be a very symbolic way of telling us that there is a dramatic change possibly happening in Turkey, no longer secular, but turning to religious, which will have major foreign when it comes to our international and foreign policy, it could have a profound impact on how we should move forward. All right, I apologize there, hesitating. But I'm trying to be very careful in what I say, not to say more. I don't want to exaggerate this. So I'm trying to be very precise and make sure I'm trying to avoid any hyperbole. When it comes to the foreign policy of the United States of America, we're going to have to at least take into consideration that this possibly is symbolic of a major change happening within that part of the world, and we need to understand that, and we need government leaders who can think that way. But sometimes their theological ignorance is demonstrated in their really bad foreign policy, and I can give you plenty of examples, all right? So let's finish the story.
Correspondent in Istanbul, Ola Gerin.
There is deep symbolism to this change being made now. It is seen very much by many observers here as President Erdogan taking another step to recast and remake Turkey according to his vision, which is a religious conservative vision. Now, it will be a popular move with his supporters. It will be a popular move with Turkish nationalists. Many people here will say to you, look, Hagia Sophia is on Turkish soil, it's in Turkish hands, and it's up to Turks to decide what the status of this monument should be.
But President Erdogan's critics will say it's also a very welcome distraction for him at a time when his popularity is waning.
Absolutely. The timing is no accident. Certainly now with the economic damage that has been done to Turkey during the COVID pandemic, and also with President Erdogan's popularity taking a hit, it's a very convenient moment to deliver something which will appeal very much to his base. There is strong opposition, which was voiced beforehand by, among others, the spiritual leader of the Orthodox Church worldwide, Patriarch Bartholomew. He pleaded for the status of Hagia Sophia to remain unchanged. He said that it belonged not only to Turkey, but that it belonged to all humanity.
So what next for the Hagia Sophia? Will it become a fully functioning mosque? And how will that fit in with its status as a World Heritage Site and a magnet for tourists?
Currently, it is the #1 tourist attraction in Turkey. When we were there just a few hours ago, there was just a trickle of visitors going in and out. Of course, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, tourist numbers here are down. But we did speak to one visitor from the UK who had just been inside with his teenage sons, and he said, look, it won't make any difference to me. I would want to come whether it's a museum or a mosque, and I would urge anyone else to do so. The widespread expectation here is that perhaps during prayers, Christian icons like the golden mosaics on the ceiling would simply be covered up, and that they could then be uncovered at other times when visitors would still want to go inside and see the glorious architecture and to see the many layers of history inside the building.
Orla Guerin.
Now, I think she's being extremely hopeful. I think if it's converted to a mosque, that many of the Christian imagery inside the building could be gone, and then we could lose the history there. I'm hoping that I am wrong, but I think this is a significant event. I think it's a significant event, and I understand I keep using the word symbolic. The reporter used it well. It's just a change. Okay, this used to be a mosque, and it was a Christian cathedral. It was a mosque. It's gone through all these changes. It was a museum. Now it's going back to a mosque. Okay, big deal. But I think there's a symbolism to it. It symbolizes, again, at least from a Christian theological perspective, it demonstrates and symbolizes, hey, the church can be transformed inside by what is happening outside. And all churches and all Christians need to ask ourselves how our churches are being transformed inside by what is happening outside. And I'm saying being transformed in our beliefs, transformed in our understandings, transformed in our worldview, transformed in our doctrine. We have to be on the lookout for that. Number two, it is symbolic of how the church can be changed, especially when church and states merge. When church and state merge, the church is changed by the change in the state. When you merge government and church, the church will ultimately be changed by the change in the government, and we do not want that. The church has to stay outside of the government, outside of the state, separate from it. Very important. And number three, this symbolizes a change in Turkey, that it's a symbolic. As we change this into a mosque, it's a symbol that Turkey could be changing from a secular state to a religious state, which will have major implications for foreign policy decisions of the United States of America and other countries around Turkey. How is Turkey going to move forward? Are they going to become more and more religious, more and more an Islamic state? Sharia law, all the different things that can come with that. How is that going to impact things? These are things to watch out for. Again, sometimes an insignificant news story that everyone ignores. And then 3-5 years down the road, there's some kind of major issue. And then everyone will start talking about the issue without even understanding what happened 3 or 5 years ago, and then make all kinds of wrong conclusions and statements in regards to it. That's why I was kind of stumbling over my words, trying to be very careful and very precise, because I want to make sure that we don't exaggerate this, but I think there is some significant, and again, I'm going to use the word symbolism happening here. So I'll stop right there. I wanted to bring this to everyone's attention and at least put it down, in a sense, digitally. I put it into a digital file that'll be here. And then maybe 3 or 5 years when something happens, I can say, hey, remember that Sunday morning on July 2020 when I told everyone about that and no one paid any attention? Well, here you go. Here's what happens. And there's been plenty of times where I've tried to do that. And then 5 years later, I'm like, I tried to tell you. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong this time, but trust me, the symbolism for those first 2 points is powerful. It is powerful. The church cannot be changed inside by what is going on outside. And number 2, the merging of church and state. No, it only is great when the state is on your religious side. But when the state changes, then you're going to experience change because of what happens. We never want to support the merging of the two. All right, I'll end it there. I have to get everything ready. I'll be back on the air here shortly for Sunday school for Victory Baptist Church. We'll be right here under the Theology Central podcast. That's where we'll be because you'll see why. All right, we'll stop right there. Everyone have a great day. God bless.